seriousness is very, very important. If you are serious, and then people around you know, my boss is so serious about the task we assign, about the people working for him. So seriousness is very, very, I think it's very important. And so if you are serious, then people will feel it. Then people start asking themselves, why my boss is so serious about us, about the target we have to attain.
You've heard me talk about him for nearly a decade. He's influenced tens of thousands of leaders worldwide, and he's the subject and inspiration for my book. And now he's here to share with you his insights around learning to lead and leading to learn, and what it means to be part of a chain of learning. I'm so happy to welcome Isao Yoshino to the show. Mr. Yoshino, who celebrated his 80th birthday earlier this year, worked for Toyota Motor Corporation for over 40 years, from the late 1960s to the early 2000s, and played an important role in the development of Toyota's people-centered learning culture it's now famous for. He was a key part of the Can Pro Senior Leadership Development Program, which embedded A3 thinking as the process for problem-solving, communication, and leadership development across the organization, and has deep expertise in the practice of Hoshin Kanri, Toyota's strategy deployment process. Mr. Yoshino was responsible for developing and leading the training program for the American frontline leaders at the General Motors Toyota joint venture NUMMI in the 1980s, now a famous case study about how a shift in leadership style can turn a company around, and teach them about the Toyota way. He hired John Shook, now the chairman of the Lean Global Network, to support the NUMMI project as the first non-Japanese employee of Toyota. I could go on and on about Mr. Yoshino's experiences, but as you know from reading the book and hearing us speak, it's not just his successes that have made such a global impact, but his willingness to share his failures and what he learned from them. At his core, Mr. Yoshino is a learner, teacher, and coach. After retiring from Toyota, Mr. Yoshino served for nearly a decade as a lecturer at a Japanese university, passing on his wisdom to the younger generation. And today, he shares his wisdom with global leaders like you. This month marks the anniversary of two important events. Mr. Yoshino and I meeting for the first time in July 2014 at a conference in California, half a year before I moved to Japan with my family, which was the beginning of what is now a close professional partnership and friendship between us. And 4 years since the release of our now award-winning book in July 2020, Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, Lessons from Toyota leader Isao Yoshino on a lifetime of continuous learning, with me as the author and him as the subject. Mr. Yoshino is one of the most wise, caring, and humorous humans that I know, and I'm thrilled to have him join us here on the show to reflect and celebrate together. Our discussions span nearly 2 hours, as they often do, so I've broken the highlights into 2 episodes for you. In the next episode, part 2, we reflect on the book and the process of where we both were many years ago and what we've learned since then, about the value of reflection, learning through questions, collaboration, and more. This episode, part 1, picks up in the middle of our conversation, in which he and we share what we learned and relearned more deeply over the last 4 years about what it takes to lead to learn and grow your chain of learning. To get the full value of Mr. Yoshino's insights, I want to give you some background context to a few of the influential leaders he mentions. First is Mikio Segura, whom Mr. Yoshino considers his best boss of his 4 years at Toyota. Second is Katsuhiko Iguchi, an 84-year-old former Japanese senator and business executive who spoke to the participants on my most recent Japan study trip leadership program, and Mr. Yoshino, just weeks before we recorded this episode. Mr. Iguchi shared his leadership philosophy based on his experience over many decades working alongside one of Japan's greatest business leaders of all time, Matsushita Konosuke, the founder of the Panasonic Group, who is known as the god of management in Japan. We start this episode in the middle of my conversation with Mr. Yoshino with a question about the phrase that inspired the title of this podcast, Chain of Learning, which I'd first heard from Mr. Yoshino when conducting interviews for the book about why he was so happy to have spent 4 years working at Toyota. Here, I asked what a chain of learning means to him now and why it's such an important concept today. Let's dive in.
But actually, genuine learning is that if you learn something from somebody, then you feel like you not owe him or owe her, but it's okay. And so a chain of learning is, when you learn something new, then people want to hide it, want to keep it by your own, because you don't want other people to get smarter than you are. But within Toyota, if you share knowledge with other people, then other people who you're talking to, they create their own way of thinking. So which is should be very different from what you have. So once you just share it with somebody else, then another guy just create their own new learning, then just extend to somebody else. It's a chain of learning will keep happening from one place to another. So that is a kind of corporate culture of Toyota. And so that is a culture that I spend knee deep. So that's why even now, I like that culture very much, which is very unique. Because sometimes when you share some knowledge and everything experience with somebody else, it requires a lot of time and effort. So sometimes you don't spend your time on something else. However, I really appreciate all those people who've been so nice to me. So now it's my turn to do something to somebody else because I owe something from them. Then I have to pay it back. Or I have to, because I keep getting everything in my mind and in me, then it's my turn to take it out, share it with other people. Then it pays off. That is a concept of Toyota's sharing your experience on something like that. So that's why Mr. Sugura always share his own way of thinking with us because he is so nice, but at the same time, he believes that is his role as a manager. So, chain of learning is a very one of the very very important habit and way of doing things at Toyota. Maybe not so many companies have this type of culture because it requires a lot of time and effort, energy on your side. You don't want to spend so much time with somebody else. You want to spend your time, energy by yourself. But I call it a little bit selfish. So if I owe something to somebody, then I need to bring it back, not to the people who helped me out, but to the people totally new. That is the reason why I still keep talking to the university office like Sakamoto-san, and I'm going to meet her next week because she's in trouble with her boss and she needs some help from me. So just I don't know whether I can help her, but I can share my thinking with her face to face. Maybe that will help her feel a little bit better. I learned something from Mr. Segura, from my partners, or whoever. So I want to share, my happy feeling to with Sakamoto-san and help her to think a little bit different way, and so that she can come back to her original great, powerful lady. So anyway, so chain of learning is one of the greatest habit, greatest activity at Toyota, which you cannot find in other companies so easily.
No, but you and I, we're trying to grow this chain of learning through the book and through our connections of starting the blog, and I love it. So everyone listening is part of our chain of learning, and to share it forward, that's how we'll make things better in the world.
Exactly, exactly. So it is not who is the teacher, who is doesn't matter. There is no such thing. So just we learn from each other. That is the power of chain of learning. So many of the Toyota leaders thinks this way.
And that's really gets to a comment you made, which is the opening line of the book, that the only secret to Toyota is its attitude towards learning. And it's built on this foundation of we're all learners and we're all, all leaders, and we can learn from each and every opportunity experience, and we take the time to do it.
Exactly, exactly. So new learning and new sharing, then that is very powerful. Only learning you keep it by your own, then you cannot extend anything to somebody else. Then nothing happens. But if you share it with somebody, you don't lose anything. But people will be happy, and you just create more powerful people around you.
I talk about how, like, links by themselves, there's no power in an individual link. The strength actually comes with that connection between us.
I agree.
These reflections about a chain of learning are connected to what Mr. Yoshino learned from his best boss, Mr. Sugiura, about leading with an attitude of caring and curiosity. Let's hear from Mr. Yoshino about his answer to my question about the importance of leaders asking questions.
I believe that's a very powerful question. It does not sound powerful, but it actually is. Because I appreciate that you talk about Mr. Segura, who is the best boss I ever worked for, and because he is so smart guy, he knows everything, but he does not show that he knows everything. All the time he asks some very simple question and help me to find out what would be the right answer to him. So he is always ready to ask some question, even though he knows everything. And so I was wondering why he's so nice, why he helps me so much, because that is his working style. But at the same time, he learned that type of attitude from his working experience in because he spent so much time in computer related divisions. So he had maybe he must have a hard time with the boss he used to work for, and a totally different crazy way of thinking. So maybe he must have learned that okay, when I have people working for me, then I want to help the people working for me, help them develop or something. So he must have determined something. But also another thing is that he's human being. He's very nice guy. And so that's why he, even though he knows the answer, but he still asks me questions. She knows just okay, what do you think about this? Even though he knows everything. Then I answered. Then he asked another, just like you did. Ask another question. Oh, you think so? Another question. He keeps asking me. I keep answering. So through that series of simple conversation, I learned that okay, he wants to know more about me. He wants to make him coming up with my comments and opinions. He is encouraging me to speak up. So that is the first reaction in my mind. So I was so lucky. I felt so lucky that I've been transferred to that division, and so I still have a lot of respect to him, and because of his attitude to the people working for him. And again, he does not give the right answer, but he just knows everything. But he just asks me, "What do you think, Yoshino?" He always make me say something. So it's a very small thing. Looks like a very small thing, but the way he does is very powerful because that made me happy. He's asking my opinion. He does not push his solid, thinking to me, but he asked me. So he showed me a kind of respect. He did not say respect because he does not speak so much. He just totally changed my mindset after I had a terrible 2 3 years under the terrible boss. And so it was just coming back from the hell to the heaven. I'm not exaggerating.
I mean, you shared so much and talk about it in the book too, how you had a, not all bosses at Toyota were great. As our conversation continued, we went on to explore what Mr. Yoshino has learned about leadership over the last 4 years, building on many of the themes that we've covered here on the podcast about focusing on people and learning as the way to get results, and his advice for you. Let's get back in. One of the themes that continues to come up in our conversations, as well as on the trips that I continue to go back to Japan and other successful companies, not just Toyota, is this real focus on people, on learning, and on happiness or joy as the core purpose or focus of leaders. Of course, they need the business results, but if you can focus on people learning and like creating human happiness, that's what's going to get to the results. I'd love to get your perspective on and reflections on that from your own experiences at Toyota, as well as visiting a lot of these other companies that we have gone with in the last few years.
The last day we were in Tokyo, and 2 weeks ago, I ran into Mr. Eguchi-san. That was really amazing talk.
And for everyone, Mr. Iguchi had worked for the head.
Mr. Matsushita, the Panasonic. I was so impressed. I was so impressed with his attitude and his dedication because, I found out from his comment is that, okay, the way of thinking at the Matsushita or the Panasonic is very close to that of Toyota because they always think about the people working together in the workplace, including their family. Can you believe it? One day he was asked by Mr. Matsushita, "Hey, Mr. Iguchi, how many people working for you?" And then, "Oh, I think I have 250 people." Then the Konosuke Matsushita says, "Okay, oh, you have 1,000 people working for you." "No, sir, just 250." Then Iguchi-san found out, okay, Mr. Matsushita is thinking that all the family members also are the people Mr. Matsushita as the president needs to think about. So aspect, broader aspect, and also, he believes he's responsible for even for the people's family members. So that is a people-oriented management way of thinking. And so I was so impressed with his comment, and I was so satisfied, and I was so happy to talk to him. And so maybe if he sent me an email to invite me in the Nagoya city, his session, something I really would like to join and spend so much time with him because that was so inspiring. So it was a great experience. Even though I don't like Tokyo so much, but I really liked attending the session very very much.
Such a powerful session, and I love that we get to learn from so many leaders. Something else that Mr. Iguchi said that really struck me, and it relates to something you've said as well, is that leaders really have to be truly serious. He talked about having 1000% conviction because if you're only partially committed, by the time it trickles down, it's sort of the rule of 50. It gets down to the front line very much. So you have to be 1000% convicted and show up in the way you want to lead and what you believe in. What did you think about that comment?
I'm very happy to know that you just remember that as a key topics. And actually, I think he's talking about seriousness, and seriousness is very very important. If you are serious, and then people around you know, my boss is so serious about a task we assign, about the people working for him. So seriousness is very very, I think it's very important. And so if you are serious, then people will feel it. Then people start asking themselves, why my boss is so serious about us, about the target we have to attain. Then they find out, okay, this setting a target is important, but also, my boss is also serious about the people working for him or something. Why is that? So it triggers so many thinking among the people working for the leader. So anyways, seriousness is very very important factor to make things happen. Another thing I feel very important is the patience. So patience and seriousness maybe go along together, I believe, in my personal feeling. And because if you are so serious about your activities, about your people, then the people will understand, oh, my boss is very serious, then I need to be serious about my assignment, about my role is. Another thing is the patient. Many cases boss knows so many things than any other people. So if boss wants to find some solutions, then maybe boss knows everything. So he is tempted to give the people the right answer right away. Good boss does not share the answer right away. The patience, you have to be patient, wait until people will come up their idea and share it with other people. So you have to be patient. So patience and the seriousness come along together. I believe, in my personal opinion, and so that is one of the things. I don't know I, whether that is That is what people agree or not. But in my mind, the seriousness and the patience are the two key things that goes together.
Sometimes people hear the word serious and they think very like stern, serious. But what I hear from you is like that concept of really committed and really believing in something and showing up and not just like delegating things and but really being serious about improving yourself as a leader and how you're showing up. To me, that's what I take away when you say being a serious leader.
Exactly. The seriousness means you show your back to the people working for you.
What do people you mean by show the back? Because some people could think you're turning your back, but you mean
Well, actually, in my context, show your back is that you show them that you are serious to the people. You don't have to say something to them, but you show your attitude. You're working so hard to uh, do something seriously. Then people will follow because, oh, my boss is so serious, maybe more serious than I do. Then I have to be serious. It's so show your back means not in a wrong way, but so you have to start something yourself first, rather than expecting the people to do that first. But you have to start something first, then show it to them, and in order to then you keep serious, then and also keep the patience. That means if you're more experienced and you attempt to give all the answers right away to the people, then it does not help them to grow. So just patience is very, very important. It goes seriousness and patience goes together. And that is one of the things I learned, again from my boss, greatest boss, Mr. Sugiura. He is very serious, and he always patient. And he did not say patient or serious. He did not say the word, but I sensed seriousness and patience from the way he behaves. He just talks to us. So that is probably is one of the key things. Well, people don't pay much attention to those concepts, but that you and I just can share this one. So maybe that kind of topic could be maybe some key topics that we can discuss in our future sessions. What it means to us.
to be patient and to be serious. One of my favorite quotes from you of all time, and several people have said this, is one of their favorite quotes that's in the book as well, is being patient requires a lot of patience.
Oh,
And,
yeah, yeah. I don't know who said that. I said, or you said, I don't know.
you said that you said that
Nice.
to me one day in your office and back in the university, and that one really stuck with me because it's so true, right? Like we want things now, and so it's hard to be patient. So we have to be patient about patiently waiting.
It is true. It is true.
If you think back at your time as a leader or even afterwards, when's there been a time where it was hard for you to be patient?
For example, if the students come up to me, Mr. Yoshino, I have a problem. And then just 5 minutes, if I listen to them 5 minutes, then I understand what this guy is talking about. So that I'm tempted to give them an advice what he needs to do or she needs to do. But that is where patience is so important. I don't tell them every time. Just those students came up with a frowning face and came up to my office and explained everything. Yeah, almost crying. Then I know the answer, but I try to be patient. So just I ask him, oh, okay, this is what, okay, let me put it down what you have said. One, da da da, two, da da da. I just go through that with him. You agree? Yes, sir, Mr. Shino-san. Thank you for so summarizing what I was telling you. Then I know the answer, what he needs to, she needs to do. But what do you think? What is the new action you need to take based on these facts? That is patience. I know the answer. I'm tempted to give them. I just don't do that. What do you think you need to do? The first step, second step, third step. Don't try to finish everything at a time. What is the first step? So then he said, "What do you mean the first step? What do you do first when you have a trouble with your father? Then you hate him. Then what is the first step? Then I take some time to talk with him in 5 minutes every day. That is great. That is great. And then I always ask some simple question, then have them answer whatever they say, I accept it. Even though they say some stupid thing, I accept it. Oh, that's great. That sounds stupid, but it has more meaning behind it. So I always patient not to give your idea to them. I keep doing that. Then they start thinking, okay, Mr. Yoshino spends so much time with me, with my stupid trouble. He is serious. Maybe he's more serious than I am about my problem. So they feel so happy. So seriousness, patience go along together. Who are the people who learn more? Maybe students? No, no, it's me. I learned so much out of those activities because I became more serious than before. I became more patient than before. So patience and seriousness is a great, great concept to me, even now.
This conversation about patience and being serious really reminds me of that very first comment that I heard from you when you and John Shook were on stage 10 years ago. You know, the very first time I met you in July of 2014, and you were talking about your relationship and your role as the manager, and then John Shook reporting to you. John Shook, for those who aren't familiar with him, is was the first non-Japanese person hired by Toyota Motor Corporation and reported up to someone who reported to Mr. Yoshino. And John, you said something about your role as a manager. Your purpose as a manager was to give John a mission or target to figure out and solve. So give him a challenge and then support him while he figured out how to reach that target. And then you had this really insightful comment, which I knew I wanted to get to know you. I already knew I was moving to Japan. But you said, as I was developing John, I was aware I was developing myself as well. You know, that's really become what I call the leading to learn framework. It's like a leader's role is to set the direction, provide support, and develop yourself. But to do that, you have to be patient. You have to be patient and serious because it's too easy to give the right answer or to give your answer.
Exactly, exactly. So, well, actually, thank you for reminding me of how important it is, because that is how we Toyota people are brought up in our workplace, directly, indirectly, and I think that is the power of Toyota's culture. I feel very happy to have opportunity to start working at Toyota and working with the great bosses and terrible bosses as well. And so if you work only with a good boss, then you don't appreciate so much. If you work with a terrible boss for 2 years in 70s, that is terrible thing for me. But same time, it's very meaningful because you just experience so terrible. You have to go through a terrible experience for 2 years, and that makes me sick in Tokyo. I learned so many things out of that because it's a very key experience to learn some key lessons out of it. It's a terrible experience. Still, it's a very good, terrible, good experience not to do things just like all those things. So, anyways, the patience and seriousness is a very simple word, but it's a lot more profound meaning, and actually it is my key words for me at my home, at my position, not position, my role to even after I just quit working for the university 3 years ago, but still keep talking with the staff member because they need some help. Then patience and the seriousness would work perfectly. So it's a great concept, very simple but great concept, and probably people don't pay much attention except you, but pay less attention to those keywords. And but probably that is seriousness and patience is one of the reasons why Toyota has been so successful. It's not directly related with the outcome or Toyota's success, but it's on the behind way of thinking that patience and seriousness probably is ingrained in our mindset, even though we don't recognize it. But it's embedded. It's a culture. It's a culture.
It is, and there you have so many rich examples of that and how it grew and developed and that seriousness and that attitude of learning and the patience was cultivated at Toyota's culture and has led to its success today. I'm really curious to hear from you about some of your reflections on some of the questions you've gotten from people over the last 4 years since the book came out because so many people wanna, they're reading the book because they wanna learn how to create a similar culture that Toyota's been so successful for and that they're getting challenges. What are some of the questions that maybe you get asked often by others or that surprise you about their what they're trying to do in their companies or what are their challenges?
Well, many people keep asking me why Toyota has been so successful, for example. Again, why seriousness or patience is so important in your workplace. Some people ask me. Everybody wants to do seriously, wants to do very patient. So it's nothing new. Why do you think it's so important? But my answer is always like this. Of course, I know what patience means, what patience means, all those things that it means to us. But that is one thing. But put it into practice, put all those concepts into practice on your workplace, whatever is another thing. So even though you know something concept in your mindset, but if you unless you put it into practice by yourself, then it does not mean anything. At Toyota company and also in my case, I always try to put into practice. I want to be patient. I want to be serious. When I was in the university, I always try to be patient. I try to be serious and with the students who have some troubles and come to me. So they can sense that, okay, Mr. Yoshino is very serious about me, about the problem I'm facing. And also, he does not give me the answer right away. He asks me questions. Why you think this way? So he keep asking me. So he is patient until I come up with my own comments. So he does not give me any answer. Do it this way. But he does not do that. So patience and seriousness, I found out that is a very, very important golden rule when you deal with people. And it doesn't matter whether the company people or the high rank people or young college students, doesn't matter. Even the family members as well. That is one of the greatest culture of Toyota, and then I can take advantage of that experience to my day-to-day life, even with my family, with my wife and my kids, and try to be patient. So that's seriousness.
I would imagine that a lot of those questions that people ask you are because we most of us outside of Toyota and many places outside of Japan maybe don't have cultures where there is as much patience. There's a lot of focus on doing and results, and to get results through creating learning and building this chain of learning does require patience and seriousness, and it's sort of opposite on how many of our company cultures elsewhere have been set up, so it's something that has to shift. After reflecting more about the book, its impact, and our partnership, which you'll hear in part two, I asked Mr. Yoshino my last question of this conversation. You turned 80 this year. I'm curious, which is congratulations. Can you believe it?
I can't believe it either.
No. If you were looking back, maybe 40 years to your 40-year-old self, you're a middle leader at Toyota. What advice would you give yourself looking back a half a lifetime?
I was preparing the answer, but I have no answer right in front of me because everybody has their own way of thinking. But one thing is so important that always ready to be open to good news, good experience, bad experience. If you are ready to learn lessons out of those experiences, good or bad, doesn't matter. So that is advice to the younger generation that if you run into some terrible situations, don't get upset and then don't stay away from learning something, but spend certain amount of time and share some space in your brain to think about what you can learn out of this terrible issues, terrible situation. Of course it sets you down and bring you down on the floor and you feel very miserable, but still on the corner of your mind, I want all the people who is now facing the troubles, spare some space that maybe I can learn something from this terrible experience, because there are millions of lessons I can learn from terrible experience than good experience. So changing their attitude, changing their mindset, you can learn something from the failure you make. That type of lessons is one of the key lessons you were talking about in this book. You did not directly say that, but maybe somewhere you said that. So that is a concept, that is a key lesson I learned from this one. If you run into some troubles, that is a great opportunity to learn something important. You cannot get it when you're happy. If you're unhappy, that is a great opportunity to learn something. If only you are ready to learn something, you are ready to view that way. So this has a lot of advice, direct advice, indirect advice to all the readers. So it's more profound than any other book. That is the power of this book, Katie.
Well, thank you. And it's the power of your stories and our shared learnings together. I'm so happy for you to get a direct opportunity to hear from Mr. Yoshino and his continued learnings since we released the book. No matter how many thousands of hours we've talked over the last decade, I always learn something new or more deeply from our conversations. And I hope you have too. Collaborating together the past 10 years and writing Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn have been some of my life's greatest honors and learning journey. Be sure to tune into the next episode of this podcast to hear even more insights and reflections from Mr. Yoshino and me. The comments that Mr. Yoshino made in this episode about being serious also connect to ones that Brad Toussaint made in the previous episode of Chain of Learning, episode 20, where he talked about what he learned from Mr. Yoshino's teachings during my Japan study trip programs about how to be a serious leader, and from hearing Mr. Iguchi talk a few months ago about how to be 1000% committed as a leader. Be sure to check it out. Again, that's Chain of Learning, episode 20. And as we wrap up this episode, reflect on Mr. Yoshino's comments and his advice to his younger self and you. How can you open yourself to learning from your experiences, both good and bad? How can you see even the challenges as a learning opportunity? And then how can you demonstrate that you are serious as a leader, a coach, a teacher, or even parent by showing your back and leading by example, being patient and growing link by link your chain of learning? Please join me in celebrating the 4-year anniversary of Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn, and the chain of learning that we've grown together. Thank you for your support, sharing the impact that the book and our teachings have had on you and your leadership, writing reviews, and applying what you've learned to make an impact in your life. If you haven't already read the book, which recently won the Shingo Publication Award, join the tens of thousands of leaders who have learned from Mr. Yoshino's 40 years at Toyota and our shared insights. Learning to Lead, Leading to Learn is available in paperback, ebook, audiobook, and just this year, we've released a beautiful hardbound edition. The book's available on Amazon or your favorite online retailer. And if you want to give your leadership team or conference attendees the gift of learning, we can also arrange for bulk order discounts and customized editions of the paperback and hardback versions. For more information, go to learningtolead.com or my website, kbjanderson.com. The links are also in the show notes. And be sure to follow or subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss part 2 of my conversation with Mr. Yoshino in the next episode. Thank you for being a part of my chain of learning. I'll see you next time. Have a great day.